Well, Dwight Jackson did, and now he's suing a hotel in Detroit. See, Dwight was applying for jobs. He says between January and April of this year, he applied to a few positions at the Shinola Hotel, but he didn't get a single call back. And then he said, well, wait a minute, let me see something real quick. In April, he applied again, but this time he made a change to his resume, his name. Instead of Dwight Jackson, he became John Jabrowski. And within days, the phone started ringing. Wow. Shinola wanted John to come in for an interview. Now, the hotel issued a statement to CNN in response to the lawsuit. Here's part of it. We take this allegation very seriously and do not tolerate discrimination of any kind. We're committed to fostering an inclusive workplace where everyone has the opportunities to succeed and are dedicated to building a diverse workforce that reflects the community. With me now is Dwight Jackson and his attorney, John Marco. Welcome to you both. Dwight, let me start with you. This did not start as a test of the influence of name or racial identity on hiring. You were just looking for a job, right?
I was truly just looking for a job. A lot of people say it was a great experiment. I wasn't experimenting or purposely trying to catch them. I was just looking for a job, like you said. It was so much experience in the hotel industry and luxury hotels at that, historical hotels of downtown Detroit. And for me to not at least get a call back, one call back as Dwight Jackson, it made me a little disparaging of like why. So that would just made me fill it out as John Jabrowski to see what kind of answers I get. And like you said, I ended up getting a call that same week.
And what did they say when they called back and they wanted to speak with John?
The HR lady called me. She said, "Hello, this is John." At first, I forgot that I even did it. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I am John." She liked me and liked the experience I had, and she just, sorry, my apologies. She also we did an interview the next time. She set up an interview for the next time for an over the phone interview. Then after that, we did an in-person interview. I ended up getting another call for another interview.
And so you got another call for another interview at the same hotel?
Yes.
Okay, so let me come back to that. John, let me come to you now. You say that you see a lot of this.
Yeah, I see this all the time. It's unfortunate. I've been doing civil rights my whole career. They're very tough cases because there's often circumstantial evidence. There's not direct proof. When a company discriminates, they don't come out and say it. And some of it's unconscious bias, some of it's conscious. But I've had cases where I've had a hiring manager say that the president of the company made a black pile of resumes and everybody else, and then taken the resumes that sound like they're black sounding names and throw them in the trash can. So this happens all the time. I think it's underreported.
Dwight, what did it feel like once you got a call back as John, but couldn't get a call back as Dwight Jackson?
It was very disparaging, honestly. It really did make me feel worthless. Like, welcome to America, like I always say when people ask me how to make me feel. Welcome to America, where people of our color have to work literally 5 times as hard to get to the same entry level doors as many other cultures. So it really made me just feel worthless, and like it's hard out here to get a step ahead just because my last name or my color or sexuality. It's a lot that goes with it.
And what did I assume you told them, Dwight, that I'm the same person, that Dwight Jackson you ignored and this John Jabrowski you have so much interest in were the same person with very little difference on the resume. What was that conversation like?
It was during the second interview. It was for the front desk agent. And I went in and I introduced myself as Dwight Jackson. Because if I wanted the job and you guys called me for my experience, I'm still the same person. It should have made a big difference. And she didn't question who I was, even though Dwight Jackson was not on the docket to be interviewed that day. She still brought up the John Jabrowski resume. So they were privy to it.
Wow. John, you touched on this a bit, but it's got to be hard to prove this case because maybe there was a different person looking at the Dwight Jackson resume versus the John Jabrowski, or it might have been, it could have been anything. It's hard to prove in court that it was because of the name, right?
Yeah, generally,
that
but
could be.
in this case, we have the smoking gun.
Let's pause this video for a second here.
The only thing that was changed, these resumes were completely.
All right. Danielle, thoughts, reactions.
It just like it makes me so disgusted as someone who, my dad employs a lot of part-time workers, usually from minority communities, and like the proximity to that hiring process for me, because I've interned for my dad before, and like consciously looking at names, right, and being aware of your bias is such an intentional practice when you don't, when you are from a different community, and when you grow up with privilege. And to think that people, that companies aren't thinking about this consciously and intentionally, and that some CEOs are even saying, making a black pile. I mean, that's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard. And I'm really sad. In the comments we're seeing, literally had friends change names for this reason. Sad but true, as happens. I mean, it's just heartbreaking, and I really hope that we can move forward. I mean, this guy seems so nice and likable and personable. Like there is no reason, probably on earth, that he would not be hired for this position.
And the applications were a couple months apart, same job, still open, same exact resume. So if we're looking at it from a scientific study standpoint, the only thing that changed was his name. I'm curious if there was a different hiring manager each time also, or was it the same hiring manager that reviewed the resume? Either way, it's disgusting, deplorable. I mean, I'm just curious if there was a difference in the people that reviewed it there, but this is unacceptable either way you think about it. And listen, everyone, I don't care who you are, everyone has unconscious biases. We all have them. We all grow up in different backgrounds or things that are beliefs. But as Danielle said before, being aware of what your biases are and being able to recognize and, move forward with them or, compensate in different ways. Joel, thoughts?
Look, is it sad that I'm not that surprised that this goes on after being a recruiter for a decade? Mm-hmm. I've seen, I'm in the Midwest, so I've seen people make a lot of judgments based on names. Another common one is you send through a resume and they're like, oh, do they require visa sponsorship? And they're just basing that purely on the name of the person, right? Purely. I've dealt with hiring managers that have said some terrible things, and usually as they're usually my client, so they feel like they can say whatever is on their mind without realizing, like, hey, I've got my own thoughts, my own ethics, right? But yeah, I don't think this is something that is new, or it's been around forever, man. Like you said. So I think where recruiters can come in and where people within organizations can come in is when you see behavior like this, you just got to call it out, and you've got to really bring it up and have some hard conversations with people. Yeah. That's what it comes down to. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I love like the way that they present that sage hospitality, the way that they so eloquently put it. But at the end of the day, exactly. At the end of the day, it's like, what are you gonna do about it? So right, like, are you gonna have that conversation? Are you gonna put your managers through a training on like how to actually be inclusive? I don't know. Like, what are you gonna do about it? That's always my question in these organizations. What are you going to do?
Awareness.
Yeah, training step one, and then it's actual accountability, and it's looking at, hey, let's see through our hires, let's see how we've actually hired people. Let's see what this process looks like, right?
But I also wonder if there's some sort of intervention from a tooling perspective, right? We can use tech to make sure and double check that we're not leading with our unconscious biases. What if they had some sort of tech that, enabled them or notified them that, oh, hey, you've seen a similar resume with the following name, right? Like, are you sure you want to pass up on this resume? Or, oh, based on the qualifications, this person's actually very qualified. Are you sure that you want to pass it on, right? Like, I think that there are some interventions that can be used, and I don't necessarily think that, every company is thinking about this, which is a problem.
So, well, you could hide the name, right? Yes. That's easy enough.
We've seen name hiring, hiding software.
But then at the end of the day, they come in for a face to face. Then this is a difficulty with it, right? Like, not everybody has to justify what decision they make and why. They'll just make a decision and they'll never tell you really why they made a decision, and that's what's really challenging, right?
So is let's see, Danielle, you brought this up before with technology, advancing quickly. How can we use tools, AI tools, for this? What are your thoughts?
Right. Well, I mean, having been in the HR tech space for many years, I've seen things like what Joel said, taking away someone's name. If you're doing video interviews, being able to monitor your bias towards the person. There's like a ton of toolings that are out there. But what's that website? Where
Don't be a racist.com.
Google.
they like review HR tech platforms and products.
Interesting.
I have to think of it.
I
but
think-
I'll put it in the chat.
So I think we can. I think AI tools. I mean, that's one of the kind of rubs on AI in hiring process for screening too. We need to be able to
Yeah.
train the system to remove bias in the HR. And I think one of our guests, Jocelyn King, is going to talk about that a little bit later. I had a chat with her at a big national convention in Chicago a few weeks ago, where we spoke
heard of
about
that
that too. Yeah, it was a big one. It was a big one. I think Jason Sudeikis was supposed to be there. But guys, any final thoughts on this before we check out the weather?
Look, I think the only thought I have is, as far as tools go, I think some of these interview tools where they can actually see, like, how long are people talking. You can look at how those interviews are actually going, and I think you can get a lot of valuable data out of that. But at the end of the day, too, you got to look at, like, who are you hiring, and if you have a hiring manager that's literally hiring the same type of people over and over, you need to bring that up. You have to have that conversation, like
Yeah.
that. To me, that's the issue. It's the hiring managers and it's leadership having tough conversations, maybe uncomfortable situations, instead of just putting out a press release that makes it seem like they care.